Welcome. Thanks for coming. So we'll start, usually I start with other things. Usually I started with open science and what's going on in science right now and our need to update our knowledge and methods in science. But this time I thought that we should start from morality. So big topic, morality, right? What is your understanding of morality? What is morality? When I say the word morality, what do you hear? Morality comes from God. What? Say more about that. What do people believe?
Some people believe morality comes from God because they follow the page of the Bible and they follow the rules that they will be honest to others and like not doing something that deviates a lot from the existing society.
Okay, good. So you mentioned a few things. First, you mentioned rules. Then you mentioned society. You mentioned religion, God, and all sorts of other organized institutions. Or what are these rules in morality? What does it mean to have a moral rule?
I think indications where it can serve as some kind of some parameters for how to run a society, like
Okay, good.
People, their behavior.
Yeah, guidelines for behavior. Can you give me an example? What's a good example for a moral guideline? Sorry? Don't hurt people, right? So where do you see this in our society, for example? Okay, law. So we have law, and then we have morality. Do they correspond to each other? Does law reflect morality, moral guidelines? Sorry? Okay. So we have law, we have religion, and then we have moral codes, and they correspond to some extent, but not always, right? There are some gaps and misalignments. What examples can we have other than not hurting people? Specific moral code? Sorry? Do not steal. Okay. Not cheat. So this kind of corresponds to like 10 commandments or something that we find in religions. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. Do we have anything that says about what we should do in a moral guideline? Sorry? Helping others. Meaning what, for example? Okay. Right. Helping the poor, helping those in need, helping those who request our help to some extent, right? So when we have this general rule, how do we come to know this rule? Where does this rule come from? When we have a sense, so sometimes we have a law, so it's very clear. The law is generally clear. Sometimes we have 10 commandments or we have a Bible or religion or something like that. Then it says something like that. But how do we form our moral code? How do we know what is moral and what is not moral? Socialization. Okay. So morality is based on a social interaction between social and animals, which brings us to social psychology. So in social psychology, we understand that morality is very much based on social interaction, social context, social environment. And we'll try and disentangle a little bit of that. What is morality and what is this about? I'll ask you to participate with me on a Mentimeter. So I'll give you some general questions and ask you how you feel. Will you save this man? All right, so this is our 91076568. So go on menti.com. I will show you a video about a real case study that happened in New York. I think it's very easy to imagine this happening in Hong Kong. And then I want you to think, will you act similarly to that person in that situation? This is Wesley. He's considered to be the New York subway hero. If you Google him, then you will see this come up. He's a construction worker, New York City construction worker and Navy veterans who in 2007 achieved international recognition after he saved Cameron, a film student who has suffered a seizure and falling onto the tracks. So let's see his story.
On the New York City subway, it's hard enough finding someone who will give up his seat to a stranger, let alone be willing to give up his life for one.
The train was coming in like that.
It happened just 50-year-old Wesley Autry, a construction worker and Navy veteran, was standing on a subway platform with his two little girls when right in front of them, a man started having a seizure.
He kind of stumbled and over his own feet and fall backwards. I see a train coming, but the train is so close, I'm like, what do I do?
Wesley jumped onto the tracks and thought if he could just lie on top of the man, keep him from flailing, maybe the train would roll right over both of them. The clearance was exactly 21 inches. Wesley and the man, 20 and a half.
No way the train can stop before this gentleman could get him up off the tracks. So he covered him with his body and pushed him down to a point where the train wouldn't hit his head and held him down under the tracks while the train came and rolled right over the top of him.
It gave Wesley's children the scare of their young lives.
I thought he was going to get killed.
And Wesley, the scare of his, too.
I'm like talking to him, sir, you can't move. I got two kids up here looking for the father to come back. I don't know you, you don't know me, but listen, don't panic. You know, I'm here to save you.
As for the guy Wesley saved, he's 20-year-old Cameron Hollipter. And other than a few scrapes and bruises, his father says he's doing fine.
Mr. Autry's instinctive and unselfish act saved our son's life.
You know, the word hero gets thrown around a lot nowadays.
What a better way to start off the new year than to save a life.
Nice to be reminded of what one really looks like.
Okay, any thoughts about this man? And how this is related to morality? What did this man do? Is this exceptional? Is this something that everybody would do? Would you do the same? No? You want to say something about this? Altruism? Okay, so you doubt your ability to help in this situation, perhaps because you don't have the same kind of skills. Then it seems like something that puts you at risk, but not necessarily will help the other person. But him as a veteran, you know, he had some skills and then he put himself in risk in order to save that other person. Do you think that other veterans should do the same, would have done the same? Is there something exceptional about this veteran regarding, you know, he has these skills? Some thoughts? Right. Yeah, you added a lot of interesting information because this is not an easy decision to make. He is not alone in the world. He's not disconnected from others. There's actually two kids that rely on him. If he gets hurt, who knows what's going to happen to these kids? For him to put himself at risk is not only risking him, but also risking others that may depend on him. Plus, he doesn't know, just like you wouldn't know, whether he can really save this person. There was a very, very small difference between how they were lying down and the train going above them. So, very split-second kind of decision in order to go for it to save the other person. This ended up being good outcome, but could very well be that, you know, both of them would get hurt somehow. So, does he qualify for the title of being a hero? Yes. Anybody disagree with the title of being a hero? If we let's try and model this. In our society, Hong Kong society, let's say that this happens, you know, some of the tracks that we have in Hong Kong going to Chinese University of Hong Kong are open. People can fall in. I think there was a lot of debate in Hong Kong. Should you put barriers or not? Let's say that something like this happens and somebody falls into this. What percentage of Hong Kong people do you think will help in this kind of situation? Let's try and quantify this. Estimate? 20%? Okay.
maybe too.
Maybe too optimistic. So let's ask others. 20%. Is this optimistic or too low? 2? So 5%. Okay, so lower than 20%. Lower estimate. Any other estimates? Depends on the specifics of the situation. Yeah. Okay. So these are interesting things to think about. I will show you another scenario and I will ask for your input on that. I'll just share with you the actual, so while I'm showing you the other thing, you can vote on the Mentimeter whether you think you will act as Wesley or not. Yes, I would. No, I wouldn't. Or I'm not sure. All right. Will you save the baby? So what baby are we talking about? Have you heard the story of Wang Yu? Maybe I'm pronouncing this wrong. Would you save the baby? This was a very interesting case study about 12 years ago that made big headlines all over mainland China and I think also in Hong Kong. If you Google this, you will see the death of Wang Yu. I'll show you the CNN video. This is a less extreme case than the Wesley New York subway hero. So reflect on the differences between this case and the previous case and what you would do in this kind of situation.
A security camera in this bustling hardware market caught the accidents on tape. The footage shows the little girl wandering in front of a white van. She's hit, run over, and run over again by another vehicle. The video was posted online, outraging the public. But these are the scenes that sparked nationwide soul-searching. Over a dozen pedestrians, motorists, and bikers pass by the bleeding child and do nothing.
The hit-and-run accidents happened here in an alleyway near Wang's father's hardware store. She lay on the ground for about 10 minutes before a Good Samaritan moved her here to safety.
Chen Shanmei was that unexpected hero, a street scavenger who stepped in to save a life, now a symbol of understated decency, a quality many fear is increasingly rare in a nation obsessed with moving up the economic ladder. I didn't think of anything at the time, she told local reporters. I just wanted to save the girl. Chen's neighbors told us she appeared overwhelmed by her instant celebrity and has since gone home to the countryside. Granny Chen represents the best part of human nature, Chu says. I thank her for that.
So Granny represents the best of human nature. Any differences between the two stories? If you were in the same situation, would you save the baby? So what is happening in this scenario? How is this related to morality and helping? What are your thoughts about this scenario?
Maybe in the Chinese society, there is a lot more than morality. It's like utilitarian thinking, if a pedestrian decides to save the baby's mother or the baby's parents may ask for the medication fee, which is very common in the Chinese society. So many.
Okay, so you're making this about this being in mainland China, a very specific context in which something happened, but you're reflecting on which part, the part of Granny who helped or the others who did not help?
Oh, the others who did not help.
The others who did not help. So you're saying there's a reason for why perhaps they wouldn't help, and this has to do maybe with the context of the Chinese society and utilitarianism and benefit versus risks kind of an analysis where they're saying this is too risky, but this did not apply to Granny who put all this aside or had a different kind of risk assessment.
Less risk for the Granny being sued.
Okay, maybe less risk for the Granny being sued. Okay, anything else that you saw in this scenario? Thank you for that. Yeah, so it seems like a much smaller ask than in the previous situation. Yeah, the time is different. Yeah, the time perspective. And yet still, a lot of people did not help in this situation. And later, we'll come back to the bystander effect and what's happening with the bystander effect. So this is also a classic debate in social psychology. What do you think you would do in this kind of situation? You would check on the baby to make sure that she's okay? How many of you think that you would at least check on the baby? Yeah, most of you? Yes. How many of you think that if seeing that the baby is in need of help will help the baby and call the ambulance and put her aside? Yes? Why is that? Why do most of us answer yes in this kind of situation? Okay. No, say more about that. This is very important. Let's say more about that. Yeah. Hypotheticals? Yeah. Yeah. What would make this more realistic for you right now? A simulation where what would happen? Yeah. So if we would have a baby here, a simulation in your computer, okay, of a baby in need of help, simulating a baby in need of help, the metaverse, the simulated universe, right? Then what would actually happen? Do you think there's going to be a difference between what we say in hypothetical situations and a simulation? Yes? What would be the difference? Mm-hmm. We try and figure out what is the other goal that's happening in the simulation to get some kind of reward or finish the game or do well in the game. Something like that? Yeah? Okay. What do you think would be a reward here? What would be rewarded in this situation? We talked about socialization, right? Well, how others would react. Sorry? Reputation.
Maybe you'll be granted like a Chinese hero, perhaps.
Yeah, Granny became a hero. What would happen if you don't help? Do you think people will regret not helping? Don't have regret on this. Yeah.
Sorry, if they have people ask for money.
Yeah.
They just want to avoid this situation.
Yeah, I see. In your lives, is there anything that even slightly resembles this situation that you feel that you're facing a similar thing as described in this situation? What is the closest in your life to this? Any specific stories, case studies, something that you feel? Have you seen something like this? Very rare. Very difficult to see this in our lives, how this translates to our lives.
That's part of that. Like keeping a fit and elderly, like in the MPR, there's way more common for.
Okay, this is good. So let's say that this is the closest that we found. Tell me about this dilemma of giving your seat to the elderly.
Economically speaking, if you decide to sit, you can enjoy the whole journey as peaceful as you can and like listening to the airport. But if you keep your seats, you may have to stand and swing in the MPR carriage.
Okay.
And depending, I think I was like looking at judging a person from his obese or like his clothes, like if he really or the person really feels not well, or I saw his leg is so slim, or like that person, if I have the feeling of that person definitely need a seat, and I'll give it to him.
Right. Do you think that when giving a seat, there is an issue of life and death, or issue of course not?
I wouldn't die if I said.
Not you. I'm talking about the elderly that needs the help.
I think the person needs some seat, but it won't cost their life.
Won't cost their lives. Okay. Pregnant woman, yeah. Okay, yeah. Maybe not life and death, but definitely have some impact on the elderly, on the pregnant woman. Good. So this is getting closer when we realize actually maybe there are some things in our lives that are getting a little bit closer to that because there are health impacts for pregnant women and elderly. Can we get even closer to this? What in our lives gets even closer to this situation? You witnessed a car accident? Yeah? Yeah, let's think about this. let's say that you see an accident or you see something happening. Then let's try and mirror this. What do you think is the equivalence? A fight? Yeah. Oh, okay. A bike cycling, going into an accident. Oh, wow. Okay. So you were facing a dilemma of whether to help or not, getting into all these calculations of, can I help? Am I going to interfere? Finally, the situation was resolved. Okay, so an ambulance came. It was, okay, so you and others in the area who saw the accident called the ambulance? Okay, so there were other people who also had the ability to help, and together, all of you came to the conclusion that you need to do something, and an ambulance helped. Good, so we are getting closer. So from a point where we thought there is no connection between our comfortable life sitting here in an air-conditioned classroom, only needing some simulation, to thinking about how in our lives, actually, there are some situations that we experienced or we see in the MTR that are getting closer and closer to this. So what's the next step? If you need to guess what is the next slide, what is the next step here? Where am I going with this? You've seen the first Wesley, now you've seen Granny. What is the next step? Putting ourselves in the situation when we are realizing that we're actually not that far away from these situations. We're going to put one step forward in order to see that we're getting even closer to this. So here's a scenario. Now we're talking about a little girl. So here we're talking about you on your way. So let's imagine that you graduated and you're on the way to an interview and you bought yourself with 8,000 Hong Kong dollars, 1,000 US dollars, like a really nice suit. And you're walking like harbor side. And then you saw that a little girl fell into the water. Unlike the bike accident, there's nobody else around. It's completely up to you. But you know that if you jump into the harbor waters with your very expensive suit, first you will ruin the suit, thereby 1,000 US dollars gone. You need to buy another suit. And then you'll be late for your interview, the job interview. The question is, will you jump? Still a hypothetical situation, but there's a point to be made here. So let's try and reflect on this together. Most of you thought that you would help in the granny situation. How many of you think that you will help here? Raise your hand. Yeah. How many of you think that you won't help? Oh, okay. There's a swimming situation here. Okay, so not all of us know how to swim. Of course, I'm taking this for granted, but of course that's not taken for granted. Okay, so assuming that we all know how to swim and have the skills, would we help or not help? So saying, if I knew how to swim, I can see myself jumping into the water and helping, right? Okay, so what is the point of these scenarios? Why do we ask these questions? This is Peter Singer. Peter Singer is a bioethicist who is a moral philosopher. And he is a person who will be talking about quite a lot in this version of the course. And this is what he writes. Actually, we are facing this right now, even if we're sitting here in the aircon. Right now in the world, there is a lot of children that are drowning, that are suffering, that are dying. They're not in Hong Kong here in front of us. They're in the other part of the world. Maybe they're in Africa or some other places with poverty and sickness. But it's a very real fact. We can see their faces. We can have real, verifiable facts about their problems. And the question is, do we have a moral obligation to do anything about this? Most of us said, yes, 1,000 US dollars, 8,000 Hong Kong dollars, losing an interview, that's a very small price to pay for helping a human being. Would you give the same amount of money, 1,000 US dollars, to right now help not one person, but a lot more persons that are dying in front of our eyes right now in Africa, dying right now in developing countries all around the world? And I think the reason why we don't think about these things is because we built a bubble around ourselves where we only see the people that are around us right now. We think of the MTR because we take the MTR every day. We think of car crashes, bike accidents, because this is what we see. But we somehow cut the line between us and what's happening to our fellow Homo sapiens around the world. It even extends beyond the Homo sapiens, and we'll take at least one session to discuss everything else that's happening in the world and what else we're impacting that is not Homo sapiens. But this, in terms of helping another human being who is dying, there are many people out there who are dying and are in need of our help. So Peter Singer, if you're like most people, you're probably saying to yourself right now, I wouldn't have walked past that child. He's talking about Granny. I would have stopped to help. Perhaps you would have, but remember that, as we've already seen, 5.4 million children under 5 years old died in 2017. So this is from his book, with a majority of these deaths being from preventable or treatable causes. Here's just one case described by a man in Ghana to a researcher from the World Bank. Take the death of this small boy this morning, for example. The boy died of measles. We all know he could have been cured at the hospital, but the parents had no money, and so the boy died a slow and painful death, not because of measles, but because of poverty. And this is something that would cost us perhaps less than even the cost of a $1,000 suit to save that boy. It's not in front of us drowning in the harbor, or not in front of us, being run over by a truck. But it's definitely somebody who is a human being, who is suffering, who is going through a crisis, who ended up being dead. So would you donate $1,000 right now to a child in South America? Those of you who said, yes, no problem, $1,000, I will jump and save this girl. Would you right now donate $1,000 to save a girl in South America, in Africa? How many of you would say yes to this? One? Okay, can you say a little bit about that? Yeah, don't be humble about this.
I could see why there might be a little bit of that.
Okay, so you're saying your thoughts about why others are not raising their hands. You can get the money back later, so you don't really need that much money. So you're saying I can let go of this money. Okay, how far would you go? Okay. Okay. Do you feel like this scenario right now, what we're talking about right now, do you feel that this is hypothetical? Or do you feel like if I give you right now the option of contributing everything that you have, but not starving, would you give that money? If I would offer you right now this option, give you a link to save these, not hypothetical, like a real opportunity to donate. Can you say a little bit more about why you feel you would do that? To what extent? You said like everything as long as I don't starve. Can you say more about this moral dilemma? So you raise a lot of issues. I'll get to you in a second. And we want to reflect on these issues. The whole point of social psychology, in the experiments that I run, and some of the things that I did with HKU students, which I will share with you, we try to understand what is the difference between these two scenarios. First of all, why do people not even think about the second scenario? Because it's very clear that this is happening in our world. Second of all, once they are aware of the second scenario, of these kids in need, why do they see the difference between the first scenario and the second scenario, the drowning child in front of them and the South American girl that's going to die if you don't help her? So you already raised a number of differences. So here in this class, we're going to discuss what are these differences, how do we think about these differences, and we will try to quantify these in order to understand Are these differences real? How do we think about these differences? Can they be minimized? So we're going to tie this into the psychological science in social psychology of questions regarding altruism and morality. Does that sound okay? So we'll go for a 10-minute break. Think about these things. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the differences between the first scenario and the second scenario, and why in the first one, everybody raised their hands, in the second one, hesitating one response. Okay, think about this, 10 minutes. Okay, so this is from Peter Singer. And Peter Singer is asking, does it really matter that you don't have to walk around these children as you walk down your street? So we don't see all these children that are suffering. Okay. So the question that I posed to you was the following. What are the differences? Why you would spend $1,000 to save a drowning child by, jumping with your suit, assuming that you can swim, but you wouldn't spend $1,000 to help the girl in South America. What are some of the differences? So just talk to me or write it down, whatever you feel like. What are the differences? So we talked about distance. South America is a very long way from here. And here, this is right in front of you. Psychologically, what does this mean? What is the impact? Empathy. Good. So empathy is much easier when you see somebody right in front of you than somebody halfway across the world, right? Okay, good. What other factors, what other differences are there? Oh, that's a very, very good thing to raise. So you don't know if you're actually helping them or not. Say more about that. So let's say I'm telling you $1,000, you're going to save this child. What can go wrong? My money to somebody who does the helping for me. What kind of issues do I have? Yeah. Okay.
Like maybe they would water and maybe they just get them to bed or something.
Good. Let's ask questions because we want to know. We want to ensure that this $1,000 really helps the girl in South America. What questions do we need to ask? What's your plan for spending the money? Okay. Do I stay informed about what you did and how you did this? Okay, good. Any other questions? Their intentions, why they're helping. Is it important in this case if they're helping for selfish reasons? Does it matter? Okay, less wanting to. Good. We actually did one of the replications was about this. So if you're helping because of selfish reasons, or you're helping for altruistic reasons, some kind of self-sacrifice, there's a psychological difference between these two. Good. What other questions do you have? Excellent. We have so many organizations. How do we know which one to pick? So let's say that we have something that we care about and we want to donate to that cause. How do we, as individuals, as students at HKU, how do we know that something is really helping or not? We want to stay informed, we want to be up to date, we want to see reports of how it's used, but how do we know that this is the best charity that there is for our cause? How do you make this kind of evaluations? Sorry? Google, yeah, tell me a bit more. I opened Google, now what? Okay, first of all, so you're focused on one specific organization, but you were asking just now, you were asking, but there's so many others all devoted to that. How do I know that do I have the time to Google all of them? Can I make this kind of, so how do we make this kind of assessment? What is the best strategy for us? Sorry? Word of mouth, okay, that's a good system. So what, for example, give me an example of how we make a decision. A friend tells you what? A family tells you what? How do you make a decision based on? Okay, so first, some knowledge from people that you know about whether their donations helped in the past. Then your own research. Something missing with the strategy? What else do we need? Popularity, a charity popularity. Then you will know what? Okay, so the popularity ensures what kind of aspects? What does it give you, popularity? What kind of assurance do you get from something that's popular? One thing that you mentioned is there's lots of people, maybe some of them did the research, right? Anything else that I'm getting from popularity? Okay, they have more eyes checking what they're doing, right? Making sure that everything, transparency, higher transparency. So popularity leads to higher transparency. Good. So at least popular ones seem to be under higher scrutiny. So if they mess up, then we'll know something about that. How does popularity help us to assess whether this one is better than all the others in comparison to all the others? Sorry? Reputation? Yes. Okay.
One of the reasons why there's a public beat up on the other country.
Okay. They were in some kind of competition between charities. So there is a market for charities where they compete. At least you know that in the competition for popularity and reputation, they won, right? So some kind of this logic, right? So what I want to share with you in this very short brainstorm that we're doing is that this is or should be a scientific process of us figuring out how to implement the best solution for whatever it is that we care about, right? And when we do science, this is very much like this. I don't know what field you're in, but let's say you're a clinical psychologist, developmental psychologist. You have a set of solutions. You open a textbook, there's so many solutions. You have CBT, you have other, dynamic therapy, you have all sorts of solutions where you can implement all these solutions. And then you want to know, I have a patient, somebody needs my care. How do I implement the best evidence? How do I implement the best solution that has the best evidence? Sometimes it's popularity. We have trends in psychological science, so we follow what's popular. And then we say more scrutiny, more people did research on this, it's more well established. But there are all sorts of weaknesses about this. So what we do in psychological science actually can be applied to the world of altruism and charity. So we don't have too much time, and I want to bring this session, this very short session, that me giving you scenarios or me raising a lot of questions, to offering at least a paradigm by Peter Singer and a group of very young, enthusiastic people who are right now changing the world. And we're going to be using that paradigm in order to try and establish how we can make the most impact. How do we choose the best way to help others? Yeah, out of sight, out of mind. Don't see the boy in Africa. Yes, thank you. So this is Peter Singer. This book over here celebrated recently the 10th anniversary. So he started this in 2007, I think 2009 came the book, and then 10th anniversary 2019. And the nice thing about this is, so you can see the titles, the most good you can do, the life that you can save. Somebody threw the word utilitarian before. So it's kind of trying to maximize utility. This is a philosophical paradigm. There are other paradigms, and we're going to talk about utilitarianism and these kinds of philosophical paradigms in the next session, using all kinds of experiments in psychology and experimental philosophy. But for now, I want to say that Peter Singer has been trying since the 1970s to quantify how we can make the most good. First, you need to establish what is morality and what does it mean to do the most good. And he tackles this head on. We need philosophers, social psychologists, and other scholars in order to try and define what is the most good. Or another approach by experimental philosophy is ask people, how they defined what is morality and what is good, which is stuff that we've done with the HKU students in many of our replications. Some of my work is on this, and I'll share some of that with you. You can see over here that he's quite an impactful scholar. I don't know if you know how to read this in Google Scholar when you look an academic up, what it means, but you can see the number of citations. So it means people referencing the academic works, is it books or articles. Here you can see H index and I10. Do you know what these mean? You don't know? So I10 is very easy to understand. I10 means the number of publications that have more than 10 citations. So sometimes we say 10 citations, 1, 2, 3, not much. 10 citations means that this work has been noticed. Therefore, if you have 309 articles that you wrote that have more than 10 citations, this is a very impactful scholar. Even more than that is H index. H index means the number of publications that have the same number of citations. This means that he has at least 79 articles that have 79 citations. Having 79 citations on an article means that it's impactful. I have maybe 3 that are more than 70. So it takes a very long time to have this kind of academic audience cite you. To have 79 of those means that you're impactful. So sometimes I will show you this kind of statistics. This is not to encourage this kind of measure of statistics, but it does give you some kind of understanding that he's not a nobody. He's somebody that both in the world of laypersons, in media, in all sorts of engagement, he is well known. He has a TED Talk and all that, but also in academic circles, he is respected and debated. So the most good you can do, the life that you can save. Here's Peter Singer in his TED Talk.
There were other people who walked past Wang Yu, and a second van ran over her legs before a street cleaner raised the alarm. She was rushed to hospital, but it was too late. She died. I wonder how many of you, looking at that, said to yourselves just now, I would not have done that. I would have stopped to help. Raise your hands if that thought occurred to you. As I thought, that's most of you. And I believe you, I'm sure you're right. But before you give yourself too much credit, look at this. UNICEF reports that in 2011, 6.9 million children under 5 died from preventable poverty-related diseases. UNICEF thinks that that's good news because the figure has been steadily coming down from 12 million in 1990. That is good. But still, 6.9 million is 19,000 children dying every day. Does it really matter that we're not walking past them in the street? Does it really matter that they're far away? I don't think it does make a morally relevant difference. The fact that they're not right in front of us, the fact, of course, that they're of a different nationality or race, none of that seems morally relevant to me. What is really important is, can we reduce that death toll? Can we save some of those 19,000 children dying every day? And the answer is, yes, we can. Each of us spends money on things that we do not really need. You can think what your own habit is, whether it's a new car, a vacation, or just something like buying bottled water when the water that comes out of the tap is perfectly safe to drink. You could take the money you're spending on those unnecessary things and give it to this organization, the Against Malaria Foundation, which would take the money you had given and use it to buy nets like this one to protect children like this one. And we know reliably that if we provide nets, they're used and they reduce the number of children dying from malaria, just one of the many preventable diseases that are responsible for some of those 19,000 children dying every day. Fortunately, more and more people are understanding this idea, And the result is a growing movement, effective altruism. It's important because it combines both the heart and the head. The heart, of course, you felt the empathy for that child. But it's really important to use the head as well to make sure that what you do is effective and well-directed. And not only that, but also I think reason helps us to understand that other people, wherever they are like us, that they can suffer as we can, that parents grieve for the deaths of their children as we do, and that just as our lives and our well-being matters to us, it matters just as much to all of these people. So I think reason is not just some neutral tool to help you get whatever you want. It does help us to put perspective on our situation. And I think that's why many of the most significant people in effective altruism have been people who've had backgrounds in philosophy or economics or math.
Or social psychology.
And that might seem surprising because a lot of people think philosophy is remote from the real world. Economics, we're told, just makes us more selfish. And we know that math is for nerds.
So he's going to talk about some nerds in form of billionaires. I'm going to skip all the things about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett who contributed, and go into real people like us.
These three. And they have used their intelligence to make sure that it is highly effective. According to one estimate, the Gates Foundation has already saved 5.8 million lives and many millions more people getting diseases that would have made them very sick, even if eventually they survived. Over the coming years, undoubtedly the Gates Foundation have that kind of impact. But if I'm not, that's fine if you're a billionaire, you can have that kind of impact. But if I'm not, what can I do? So I'm going to look at 4 questions that people ask that maybe stand in the way of them giving. They worry how much of a difference they can make, but you don't have to be a billionaire.
So this relates a little bit like in the bike crash. Can I help? Can I really make a difference? Should I intervene? Whereas other people can do better. There are billionaires just next to me who can solve everything in Africa. Why do I need to make a sacrifice of putting my money where I'm not having as much as the other billionaires?
This is Toby Ord. He's a
Toby Ord, together with Peter Singer and a few other amazing scholars / early career kind of people, founded the effective altruism movement that we'll be discussing in the upcoming sessions, who have really changed the world, starting in the 20s up until now. Some of them are approaching 40.
Research fellow in philosophy at the University of Oxford. He became an effective altruist when he calculated that with the money that he was likely to earn throughout his career, an academic career, he could give enough to cure 80,000 people of blindness in developing countries, and still have enough left for a perfectly adequate standard of living.
So he dedicated everything above 18,000 pounds a year to give to charity. He calculated, all I need, a little bit like what you said, all I need to survive, all I need to do well, and he has a mortgage, he has kids, he has a wife, he has a home that he needs to take care of. He calculated, all I need is 18,000 pounds, everything in excess of that. And now he's quite famous, he's not a research fellow, he's already advanced in his career, he's making a lot more, and all of that goes into charity. And Peter Singer tells his story, and then Toby Ord has all kinds of other TED Talks and all of that. We don't have a lot of time, so I just want to leave you with a teaser of stuff that you can do at home in order to understand, where do you stand on this? So in this course together, we're going to figure out, do we have an impact? What kind of impact? What can we do in order to change something? But already I want to give you some tools in order to make the most of this. So for example, the charity that's called the Life That You Can Save, which is named after the book of Peter Singer. So Peter Singer for a very long time was looking for other people to carry on the message and build practical tools. He's a good speaker. He's a good ethicist in discussing bioethics. But bringing solutions, he needed enthusiastic young people to create these foundations. And over here, you can see the life that you can save. And you can ask yourself, how many lives can you save? And you can actually calculate that. They're inviting you to make a pledge. How much of your salary, how much of your income are you willing to give? And how much help is this going to make? They're actually even comparing charities for you and making the calculations for you. They're ensuring transparency and reporting so that you get up to date, that you get reports about each and every dollar in your contributions, what that is going to do. So for example, if you look at the impact calculator, you can open this. You can say how much money you would give, let's say $1,000 US. You can compare all the charities, for example, the Against Malaria, all the main charities that are recommended by GiveWell. We'll talk about GiveWell later on. If you see the impact, we'll actually tell you that if you donate $1,000 US, you can buy 500, and they can guarantee reports to show you the impact buying 500 bed nets with that money. And they tell you one bed net protects 2 people from malaria for up to 3 years. So suddenly we're not talking about something abstract. We're talking about something quantifiable, something that's very, very concrete, that is shortening the distance from, you know, somebody drowning in front of you to somebody out there in Africa. So effective altruism is trying to kind of bridge the gap between these two scenarios in order to help people contribute more. I want to show you one more tool. How rich am I? This is a good question to ask yourself. So for example, what is the average income for a Hong Kong student after graduation? Let's say, I don't know if this is true, 30,000 Hong Kong dollars a month. No? How much? 20,000? Let's assume 30,000, okay? Maybe it's more for some people. So if you put this here and you say you just one adult, later when you have a family, you can update this, how many children you have, how many adults, you can calculate. Actually, looking at the world income, you're at the top 1% by far. In Hong Kong, we are very, very privileged. And it will give you all the statistics between, you know, the median person income around the world and where you are. We're going to be discussing what facts are and how we gain these facts. And then what would happen if you would donate 10%? Maybe you don't need 10%, maybe 2%. So if you have this kind of income, what you would do with that and what kind of difference it might make for other people in their life. So this is just a teaser. We'll go into this in more detail. But generally, what we'll aim to do is contribute to this kind of direction where we quantify, use psychological science, use social psychology, judgment decision-making in order to try and understand how people make decisions, why they make these decisions, and how we can help them make these kind of decisions. So I'm going to summarize this. So we use psychological science tools to understand and possibly impact the way that people think, feel, and behave about morality, responsibility, helping, giving, risks, benefit, well-being, suffering, cost effectiveness. And finally, our main goal in this course is to leverage social psychological science to doing good in the world and addressing urgent issues. So that's it for this session. I know it's very abstract, it's a little bit broad, but we've had some interesting discussions. You can go home and reflect about this. I'll keep communicating with you on Moodle, on Slack, and then we'll meet again and talk more next week. Thank you.